Hi, hello, and welcome to another episode of The Dunker Spot. We are part of 342 Productions. I am your host, Nekias Duncan, a writer for basketballnews.com. And joining me, as always, is my co-host, Steve Jones Jr. Steve, how are we doing, sir?
Feeling good, feeling great. Happy to be here, excited to be here. Thank you, Dunkers, for once again embracing your bounce. Nekias, what was tougher, Udonis Haslam talking about you in the post-game interview or the new intro?
We you know what? I don't know how to take that. I don't know if he's talking to me. Props to him.
Directly to you.
I don't know. Because like my smoke has never been for him. It's more so been like the people above that. We're not gonna start the podcast this way. It is play-in/playoff week. I am excited. You very much sound excited. We can dig right in. Before doing so, a quick news note on the WNBA side. A statement was released earlier today as we record, about 4:30 on Monday afternoon, that they have expanded the charter flight program for the W. Charter flights throughout the entire postseason, including the finals, charter flights for the Commissioner's Cup championship game, and charter flights for back-to-backs. Steve, what was your initial reaction? Were you surprised that this came about this quickly?
Not surprised. I think the W's are moving in that direction, trying to add that for their players to take care of them. And I think there's going to be more to come. I know we want it to come a little bit quicker, and hopefully it should. They deserve to be able to have that, but baby steps. It's gonna take baby steps.
It's a step in the right direction. I just hope that they are able to build upon this rather quickly. And the big thing to watch with the W over the next few years is just going to be what the new TV deal is going to be, what that influx of money will be, and what opportunities will open up from there. So we'll be keeping an eye on it, but certainly a step in the right direction. Now, recording on a Monday, which means tomorrow, or by the time you hear or watch this on YouTube, it will be play-in season. We have the 7-8 matchups coming up pretty quickly. We can start with the Miami Heat and the Atlanta Hawks facing off for what feels like the 18th time in the past season and a half. The Heat won the season series 3-1. Steve, heading into this matchup, what is your biggest question or your biggest questions heading into this one?
Well, it's a one-game sample. Can the Hawks defend? Can the Heat score? And are these two things tied together? We know what Trae Young can do in this type of setting. Can he do it against this Miami team that is and has shown that they'll be locked in against them? Can Miami score enough to give their defense the opportunity to load up? And does any of this matter because Miami's just eventually going to go zone?
Yeah, that's going to be the nasty part. To the offense point for Miami, shout out to cleaning the glass. That one, filters garbage time, and two, they also have it split so you can see how teams have done over the last couple of weeks and give you that kind of snapshot for recent play. Miami is 11th in offense over the last 2 weeks, and we've been talking throughout the season about how uneven the offense has been for the Heat, the process being a little wonky, the three-point shooting just not being there for most of the year. It's perking up at the right time. For me, I am curious to see what the Hawks do with Jimmy Butler when he's the screener. This is a game that the Heat have gone to more often this season than any other year in the Jimmy era. And with this specific matchup, it's been a way for them, to steal your term, Steve, to kind of reverse engineer some matchups. Like, all right, maybe Jimmy isn't the ball handler in this pick and roll to try to pick on a smaller guy, i.e. Trae Young. Let's use him as a screener and see if we can get some good stuff out of that. Let's see if Trae is able to fight over and stay attached. Or if it's going to be some kind of show of recovery, can we get a slip from there? Will Atlanta's back end, which has been pretty inconsistent this year, will they be able to be keyed in and pick up Jimmy? And so that's kind of where it starts for me. And I think back to, I think it was the first meeting in March between these two, where the fourth quarter was basically Jimmy screening to try to get Trae on him, or it's Jimmy as the ball handler and Tyler Hero is screening to try to get Trae into the matchup. And he basically slammed the door in that fourth quarter. I am a little bit worried about what that looks like for Atlanta.
It's fair. Miami's best offense to me is still Jimmy Butler against the person you don't want to guard Jimmy Butler. And Trae Young absolutely qualifies there in that category. Another thing is I have a sneaky feeling this might be a Bam Adebayo game. And I only say that because Atlanta does play drop. Bam has done a good job this year of playing on the short roll, whether it's that pull-up or that floater. And I'm not sure that Atlanta has the versatility defensively. That's where my concern is. Are they going to be able to toggle through things? With Miami, I have question marks. Atlanta can score and has scored against this Miami Heat team, but the ability to toggle between drop, switch, trap, at the level, zone, they can do a lot of things in a 48-minute session that maybe the Hawks can't hit.
That makes sense. On the Hawks front, do you foresee them going with any cross matching? Just to throw in that wrinkle in this one game sample. And I say that because I was listening to my guy Giancarlo Navas, Miami Heat beat. They were doing a play-in preview yesterday on Twitch, and he threw in like, "Hey, is this the time that Atlanta breaks out Clint Capella on Jimmy Butler?" We have seen different teams. We've seen Philly in the past. We've seen Milwaukee in the past, and the other teams they'll say, "Hey, let's just put our center on Jimmy Butler. Let's dare him to make some jumpers. If we have a big wing that we could throw on Bam, let's see if we can do that." Toronto's another team that comes to mind. They'll throw OG Anunoby on Bam Adebayo to turn those handoffs into a switch, turn pick and rolls into a switch, and with a big sagging back, like, all right, Jimmy, knock down enough pull-ups to make us care. Do you think Atlanta tries that with Clint Capella on Jimmy and like DeAndre Hunter on Bam?
They could. The only issue is Miami, that Jimmy Bam pick and roll is usually a switch anyways, and it does not eliminate Trae Young from being on the court. And this sounds like I'm just taking a shot at Trae Young, but I just feel like they're going to go at him in the same way the Hawks are going to say, "Hey, Tyler Hero, come here. You come defend, and you come defend this pick and roll." I don't know what the impact would be. And that's assuming Jimmy Butler's going to want to shoot the basketball. I think it's that time of year to where I don't know if that's going to deter in the same way that it did in the other matchups.
I got you. Well, I mean, if you believe the video that dropped not too long ago and Jimmy's like, "Oh, it's after the All-Star break. This is when I turn up," then that may be the time. On Trae, because he's just going to be such a central figure in this one. The Heat are going to throw the gauntlet at him. He'll see different defenders. He'll see different schemes. Defensively, I am intrigued because I remember we talked about this not too long ago after that 2-game series with Miami and Atlanta. He got the Tyler Hero assignment in one of those games and did pretty darn well. And I was like, well, if he can hold up, this Heat offense can bog down. And does that allow Atlanta to get some stops, get out in transition? And so then you don't have to worry about their half-court offense being a little slower or being a little stagnant. And if they're able to flow from there, what does it look like? Because I think back to the one win that Atlanta had during the regular season series. I think it was the MLK game. The shot making was absurd, particularly in that first quarter. But that was kind of the formula. Like the Heat went hunting, and when it didn't work, it was some bad passes to try to force some things. They got turnovers. They were able to run off of that. Or it was late clock contested shots, and Atlanta was able to run off of that and kind of get Miami on their back foot. So it's going to be an inflection point for sure for Atlanta. Like Trae Young's going to have to bring it. A quick stat, if I can drop on that front, with Jimmy Butler as the screener offensively and screening in order to get Trae Young on him throughout this regular season series, over 1.1 points per possession when the Heat went to that. When Jimmy Butler was the screener and going after anyone else, whether that's, Bam with some of those snub pick and rolls and screening Capella, whether it's screening DeJounte Murray, trying to get someone else on him, under 0.2 points per possession on those. The Heat weren't able to get anything good out of those non-Trae screens. So I wonder, one, how often they go to it, how early they go to it, and if they're able to find any other holes to kind of poke at within the half court to make that work. Who's your X factor in this game?
Jimmy Butler. Does he want to shoot?
That tracks.
Who's yours?
For me, it's going to be, honestly, you can kind of zoom out. I would say Atlanta's bigs, period. Since I do think while Miami does a lot of things defensively, they are going to primarily switch stuff and try to flatten Atlanta out. I think this is going to be a figurative and literal big game for their bigs. I'm eyeing John Collins in particular. If the Heat are going to switch and try to flatten out those actions, those slips are going to be there. And he's going to have to make short roll decisions. He's going to have to knock down shots. If Clint Capella is involved, he's going to have to make short roll decisions. Because if Miami is able to switch or put 2 on Trae and then rotate behind that, and Atlanta isn't able to take advantage of that gap created, it's going to get ugly for that offense. And I don't think Atlanta has the transition defense and just the defensive infrastructure in general to really turn this into like a mud slinging fest. They're going to have to score. They're going to have to score a lot. They're going to have to do so efficiently. Who do you have winning this game?
I have Miami.
I see. I am sorry, Atlanta. I also think Miami is able to pull this one out. From there, we can go to the next one. Let's go to the next 7-8. Out west, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Minnesota Timberwolves, already looking much differently than I anticipated heading into the weekend.
What do you mean? What happened?
Well, there were some hashtag antics. Jaden McDaniels, I think early foul trouble. He punches a wall and his season looks to be done because of a hand fracture. Not ideal as the guy that primarily gets the LeBron assignment. And as we talked about in the last episode, like I had him as an all defensive team forward. So that's pretty big. Naz Reid has already been out, suffered a wrist injury not too long ago. Not sure what his availability will be if the Wolves make the playoffs. And then Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson, a stern talking to on the sidelines. Some disagreements. There was a rankum between pancakes, waffles, and French toast. I guess Rudy didn't like the selection that Kyle Anderson went with. Kyle Anderson did not like the fervor in which Rudy disagreed with the pancakes, waffles, French toast thing. And antics ensued. Rudy Gobert has been suspended for this play-in game. And so that's 3 of their like 5 or 6 front court players that they have in the rotation. So my first question just becomes, who do the Wolves start? And like, how deep do they go in their rotation in this game?
I mean, I would assume that you see they may have to go Alexander and Prince off the top of my head. And then off the bench, it might be just Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jordan McLaughlin. Mix in some Luka Garza. Maybe we get a Noel or a Rivers appearance. But that's about it. I mean, the good news is the rotation does shorten this time of year anyways. You can keep some of that versatility lineup-wise, if you want to say it, that they had when Cat was on the bench. And, hey, we have some size. We have people who make shots, can drive closeouts. We can still send around Mike. We still got Cat. We got Anthony Edwards. I think they can figure that portion out. They're just going to play heavy minutes. And I think that's just going to be the rotation. They're going to go about 8, maybe 9 deep.
Yeah. So 2 things. One, that is Nathan Knight erasure. We can't allow that on this here podcast. In all seriousness, we were talking about this a little bit before the show. Like, I think the starting unit should be okay. Like, I would assume Taurean Prince steps in for Jaden McDaniels. I would imagine they go Conley, Edwards. You had Prince and Kyle Anderson as your 4s and then Cat at the 5. And again, it just kind of goes like, okay, what's the front court looking like beyond that? How do you feel about their small ball viability now?
The starting lineup is that's the viability. Unless you want to throw in like Jalen Noel for someone. It's either Prince or Anderson at the 4. Unless you want to get really wacky with it, but that's about it. So it's just going to be what other guards play with them.
Yeah, I got you. I was just trying to figure, like, could they figure out a lineup that doesn't involve like Garza or Knight, but they have like Cat resting? Like, do we see some Kyle Anderson at the 5? I guess that's where I was kind of going. But man, that kind of gets tight though. So I'm not sure. I guess from there, how do you feel about Kyle Anderson now having to guard? I would assume he takes LeBron if Cat's going to be in the front court.
I mean, I don't mind the matchup, in all honesty. Where my concern goes with Minnesota defensively is, are you about to open up plays for this Laker team? In theory, with Rudy at the 5, you can say what you want about him. He was going to be in a drop. He was going to protect the rim. If Cat's the 5, do you want Cat in the drop?
Not necessarily. I will say, like, going to the second half of that Wolves Pelicans game, after all the hashtag antics, like, they did mix in him at the level and him being in a drop, and like it was fine. Granted, this is again a half a play, and I think he played 15 or 16 minutes in the second half, so it wasn't a huge sample. But like, maybe this is a matchup that you could get away with it just because the Lakers don't have a ton of dependable pull-up shooters. Like, it's D'Lo who's been on a heater all year long.
I'm going to raise my hand.
Okay,
don't mean to interrupt you, but D'Angelo Russell is facing Minnesota. I think his pull-up game may be a little bit different in this game. That's why I asked the question.
I got you. I think that's fair. But I'm saying, like, outside of him, like, Malik Beasley will definitely pull up. And ask your local Laker fan how they felt about the Beasley experience since he's been there. When it's good, it's good. When it's not, it's like, hey, why does this guy keep shooting? So I think just zooming out, I could see where the Wolves may feel more okay than you would think with Cat in the drop. My general thoughts on Cat in the drop. But like in this specific game, they may be able to find more pockets than you would expect with Cat in the drop. What is your big question heading into this one from the Lakers side or the Wolves side? Either one.
Well, with Karl Anthony Towns at the 5, can they put pressure and get to him? Can the Lakers generate paint touches? Are they going to be able to get to drive and kick? Are they going to be able to drive closeouts? Are they going to be able to open things up? Will Austin Reeves get downhill? Will LeBron get downhill? Which Anthony Davis are we going to see? And then defensively, where do they want to put Vanderbilt? What do they want to try and take away? How is that all going to line up? And this is going to be the tricky part because, Minnesota has people out. Those tend to be some of the more difficult games to win because you're not necessarily prepared for exactly what they're going to run. And it could open things up for Minnesota offensively. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see how the Lakers try to run things, how they try and unlock LeBron, and how Minnesota responds defensively.
I got you. On the LeBron front, I'm kind of curious to see which version of LeBron we get offensively. And I say that because he isn't that far off from his return after the layoff with injury. And it has been a rather 3-point heavy stretch for him as he works himself back into form. I wonder if getting Kyle Anderson instead of Jaden McDaniels, if we see more of the drives from LeBron. And if so, how does Minnesota deal with that? Because I think sneakily, and again, I think the starting lineup should be okay. I think Taurean Prince has been a pretty important piece for Minnesota all year long. With him, Kyle Anderson, Cat, there is still a lot of size and a lot of length. So in theory, they should still be able to crowd the paint. I just wonder, do we see a juiced up LeBron in this one? And if he's able to get Kyle Anderson in foul trouble, or if he's able to get Cat in foul trouble, I think things can really deteriorate from there, from just a rotation standpoint. So I'm curious to see what that's going to look like.
One quick addition. I am very curious to see how the Lakers want to defend Anthony Edwards in pick and roll. Are they going to put 2 on the ball? Is that going to open Cat pops up? Is Cat going to be able to pop and roll? That's the fun part of the play-in. There's so many things that could happen, but there's only one game to see if you're going to get there.
I got you. And on that front, just a very brief, respectfully messy before I move on. Is there anyone in the lineup now that Ant won't pass to? To the point of opening things up from the Wolves side, if they are going to put 2 on the ball against Ant, he has looked more comfortable against that coverage. He's shown more growth there throughout the year. That's been part of the playmaking growth. Now, if it's just Cat in the 5, we may just get the ball popping around.
Did you have X factors or did you want to talk Raptors Bulls?
All right. Who are your X factors in this game, Steve?
That's the guard play from the Lakers. They need Austin Reeves turning the corner, getting in the paint. They need D'Angelo Russell making those pull-ups. Those guys are going to have to put pressure on Minnesota's defense. They're going to have to open plays up. They're going to have to add things for LeBron and AD. Who do you have?
I have Taurean Prince, someone who has shot well from 3 throughout his career, has not shot well from 3 in the series against the Lakers this season. They're going to need shooting from him. They're going to need defensive pop because I'm sure he's going to end up spending some time on either LeBron or AD, depending on what the lineup construction is. He's going to have to hold down the fort. And if he's able to do that, the Wolves are going to have a chance, man. And also just in general, Ant decision-making is going to be huge for this one, as it always is. Who do you have winning this game?
I'm going, this is sneaky and tough. I'm going to go Lakers.
Okay. I'm trying to gauge the vibes here after literally everything that happened on Sunday. This still feels like a game the Wolves can win if the Lakers don't knock down enough shots from the perimeter. I lean Lakers still.
No, go ahead and do it. Come on, say what's just. You know you want to pick the Wolves.
No,
Come on. I'll help you. Scrappy team. No one believes in us. We just was fighting each other. Karl Anthony Towns motivated. What else we got? Taurean Prince making threes. Anthony Edwards. Mike Conley.
But man, I'm gonna go Lakers. I think the Wolves end up in foul trouble. I don't know if they get enough. I don't know if they get enough offensively. And I don't know if they have enough answers for the Lakers stars in light of the depth that they've lost through the injury and hashtag antics.
Got you.
I think it's going to be a close game, though. Let's go to the 9-10s. We'll go out east. The Raptors and the Bulls. The Raptors won the season series 2-1. Steve, what is your big question heading into this matchup?
Which team is going to move the ball? That's number one. I think this is a very fascinating matchup. In theory, you have a Raptors defense who has size, they have length, they have versatility. You have two Bulls in DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine who can take your defense and throw it over the top rope. Which one's going to win out? Which team is going to find their rhythm, find their way? Which big is going to have the most impact? Is it going to be Vucevic? Is it going to be Jakob Poeltl? Which one of those guys is going to get hit in pick and roll? Who's going to be attacked? What's the mismatch? Can they use the attention that DeMar may get and open things up if you're Chicago? It's very interesting because this could just be a huge rock fight.
That's what we need, another rock fight between these two teams. I think for me, I had down in the dot, like, which Zach LaVine is going to show up. And I've mostly meant that whenever I've asked this question throughout like our pod history, it's mostly been like a health thing. Like, is the knee good? Will we see the burst from Zach LaVine? With this matchup, it's more scheme-wise. Because I think as we saw in basically the lone matchup that these teams were this current iteration, that was the late February matchup where Jakob Poeltl was there, et cetera, et cetera. It was OG Anunoby on DeMar DeRozan. It was Jakob Poeltl playing at the level and sometimes coming out a step higher to just trap DeMar, sometimes just making sure he doesn't turn the corner. And now you got OG as the rear view contest guy. You got Jakob Poeltl in his face. They just did not let DeMar DeRozan do anything. And even before the trade, it was very much, you, sir, we know we are familiar with your game. You are not doing anything. These other guys, y'all are going to have to beat us. And so on that front, I do wonder, one, I guess just from a physical standpoint, like how is Zach LaVine going to be feeling? Will he have the burst? But beyond that, is he ready to take on a bigger load? Because I think, like, even going back to that matchup, OG had DeMar DeRozan. He saw a lot of Fred VanVleet in that matchup. And with as switchy as Toronto is, that's not something that they want to switch. So you do get some drop in that aspect. You do get, especially with DeMar DeRozan, if Zach LaVine is coming off of screens off the ball, then you have a pocket to pull up into. Like, will we get an aggressive and efficient Zach LaVine? Because if you do, then Chicago's going to have some pockets to attack there with that Toronto defense.
To be honest, it was the game against Toronto that made me notice, Zach LaVine's driving a whole lot more. And if he's going to be able to do that against that defense, I think it opens a lot of things up. Again, Chicago has Beverly and Caruso who will move the ball. This is a game with, as you mentioned, the attention that DeMar gets defensively. Zach LaVine and Vucevic are going to have to make shots and make plays and try and loosen things up. That's just going to have to happen. If one of those two are off, it's going to be tough. And then if Toronto does the thing offensively, 2 thumbs up. But they could also do the thing offensively.
That's 2 thumbs down.
Yeah,
don't want that. Who's your X factor coming into this one?
We talked about LaVine. I have Fred VanVleet down.
Okay.
I think with Vucevic in this game, he's got to make plays in pick and roll. He's got the opportunity to make shots in pick and roll. If he makes shots, Vucevic comes higher to the level. That opens things up. I think he's a big key for it. And I think Jakob Poeltl, his defense, they're going to need him to hold up and be a little bit versatile in this game. Those are the ones for me.
I got you. For me, the big one for me, I think, is going to be Alex Caruso, who has been incredible all year long defensively. And I think what gets a little bit undersold about his offense is just how quick of a decision maker he is. The screening also pops for me for very obvious reasons, but that combined with the decision making is good. The problem in this matchup is that Toronto has not cared at all when that man has been on the perimeter. And it was stark watching the Bulls try to run some half-court offense, and Pascal Siakam got that matchup. And whatever Chicago tried to run, if Alex Caruso was spaced, there was not a Raptor within 8 to 10 feet of him. And he's going to have to knock down enough shots he's not going to hit enough shots for where Toronto's like closing out on him. He's going to have to knock down enough shots to where they tip their caps. Like, well, if he hit 3 threes, that's how we lose. He's going to have to do that. And then on the other end, Caruso got the Siakam assignment as well. And that's naturally a massive size advantage. Doesn't really matter to Caruso. He's been guarding up all year over the last couple of years. He's going to have to hold serve, though. Because if Pascal Siakam gets going early, that may incentivize Chicago to send more help. And all Toronto's really needed offensively is for teams to send extra attention to open things up to make life easier on them because they being so light size and not having a bunch of shooting, it's been pretty easy to switch against Toronto in the half court. If Pascal starts just handily winning that matchup and forcing double teams, that could spell some trouble and open up some catch and shoot opportunities.
No, I hear you there. I think if I were to have a counter, Patrick Beverley and Alex Caruso know exactly what they're there to do, and that's play defense and occasionally knock down shots. And if I don't have it, I'm going to keep the ball moving, which is interesting and important against a Toronto team that cannot sustain defense at times. And then on the other end, you mentioned Caruso's defense. This could just end up being a battle of who attacks Fred VanVleet and who attacks Zach LaVine and what happens there. So.
And on that front, a secondary X factor that I had in this one was OG Anunoby. He's going to have the DeMar DeRozan assignment defensively. He's going to have to get after him and force him into tough shots or force turnovers. On the other end, though, going back to that late February matchup, LaVine got the OG matchup. And Toronto opened that game, I think, with Horns flex, making Zach LaVine navigate screens. OG got a layup out of that, went to the action several more times in that first half. It's like, okay, I don't think they're going to get to a point to where they're running the offense through OG Anunoby, but it's worth noting they do have some quick hitters to get him open. He has shot well from three this year. And just zooming out over the last month of play, OG Anunoby's been very good offensively. The shot making has been there. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised if he has a big game. He has the ability and the potential to do so. So I would just keep an eye on him as well. Who do you have winning this game?
This one's a tough one. I'm going to go with the Bulls.
Think they're able to knock down those shots and get it done?
I think they have the shot making. There's very little room for error, but I feel like at some point DeMar does the thing against Toronto.
I got you. Also worth noting, Vooch is averaging 19, 10, and 5, 47% from three against Toronto in the regular season series. Like, he's a big part of what they do, and he tends to pop in the games that they win. So wouldn't be a surprise at all. I am going to lean. I will lean Toronto. I think they're able to bother Chicago's offense enough. I also think the size advantage is going to be key in this one, just across the board. And I think even if Toronto doesn't shoot well, I think they can win on the offensive glass. This is something that they've done throughout the year. They had a big advantage in that February matchup that helped them win that game as well. So I think I will lean Toronto in this one. Okay. Let's close out the play-in section with the Pelicans and the Thunder, a dunker spot favorite in this one. Steve, what's your big question heading into this one?
Well, I mean, this is a really interesting matchup. So it's not even so much one big question. I'm just trying to figure out what the dynamic is going to be. Because you've alluded to it. This is a Thunder team that's going to give the effort defensively. But the Pelicans have Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, who, again, are two guys who can take your defense and throw it over the top rope. The Pelicans, their resurgence, their push was largely based on moving the ball offensively, but their defense showing up, being active, getting stops. The Thunder have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in an offense that is heavy on drives, and more drives, cutting and movement. So what game plan do the Pelicans try against Shai? They have the size, the length. They probably have the wing defenders, you could argue. But again, the Thunder do such a good job of spacing the floor, clearing out their wings. If you can't keep the ball in front, you're in trouble. If you aren't aware of the cuts that are going to happen, you're in trouble. So can the Pelicans handle that is probably my biggest question. And then, like, is Brandon Ingram versus Lu Dort going to be fun? Are the Thunder ready for what Brandon Ingram is doing right now? Because it's not just the scoring, it's the playmaking. If he's going to play like that, it's a different ballgame.
I got you. And on that front, like, my eyes immediately go to the stars in this one. Like, my biggest question was like, hey, what kind of space is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander going to have to operate? It's not new that teams try to crowd the paint against him. Like, this is something that you brought up throughout the season on the pod, that, hey, teams are being a little bit more aggressive about what they want to take away from Shai. That's what's made the playmaking growth so important. That's what's made the mid-range shot making so important for him. New Orleans is kind of a different beast in that not only do they crowd the paint, they got a lot of wings. They got a lot of length. Like, Shai's going to see just a personal fun for me. Like, it's going to be Shai versus Herb Jones. And Herb has been pretty darn good defensively, has a lot of length. And then behind that, Trey Murphy's a pretty long dude. And they have size behind that. And this kind of highlights the other issue that I've had, like going back through the previous matchups, which it's kind of a mess from like a scouting perspective because the teams are so different. Brandon Ingram missed, I think, 3 of the 4 matchups. Zion was in one and missed a bunch. CJ missed some. So like hard to glean a lot from that. But man, they did not care about the shooters out there for OKC. And OKC didn't shoot particularly well from 3 in either of these matchups. And so part of me is like, man, Shea got his numbers. He did turn the ball over and nobody else got loose. And so like, it's hard for me to kind of balance. These are shots that they're giving like good shooters. Like there was a random possession, I think second quarter, like Lindy Waters just gets a wide open 3 above the break. I was like, well, this guy can shoot and they're still sending aggressive help. And Isaiah Joe was shaking free. And it's like, well, Isaiah Joe can shoot. Didn't shoot well in his regular season series, but he can knock down shots. They just do not care. And so I wonder how efficient Shea's going to be, but I also wonder, it's, as you said up top, this is a 1-game sample. Is this just the game that the Thunder and the good shooters that are getting these looks, if they just knock these down, and what does New Orleans do from there? Can they afford to loosen up on the help from Shea to close out to some of these shooters? And if so, what does that open up for Shea? So I am, if you can tell, I am a little bit excited for this one. This should be a fun game. Who's your X factor in this one?
My X factor, it's going to be CJ McCollum for me. I think they need a CJ game and then Trey Murphy. They need those 2 to show up offensively. I think that gives them the wiggle room they need. What say you, Nekias?
Before I answer that, a quick question for you. Are you worried at all about what CJ McCollum has been inside the arc in these Thunder games? And just the collective speed and ground coverage that he's had to deal with the digs and stuff like that?
No. I trust the shot making.
Okay.
In these spots, and especially if teams are going to defend them in a specific way, which they continue to, I trust the pull-up will be there.
I got you. I was curious on the CJ front just because, like, you know, something else that you've talked about, like him getting dropped. It just seems like that's just a thing that teams just give him. And like OKC is one of the teams like, no, actually, we can play a little bit more aggressively, or we'll just switch this because everyone's around the same size anyway. So I do wonder, like, maybe that's contributed to some of the inefficiency inside the arc from him if he'll have a big one. But for me, though, X Factor is going to be Lou Dort. He's going to get the Brandon Ingram assignment. And as you said, he's been on an absolute tear as of late, the scoring and the playmaking. Like I talked about Shea and the amount of length that he's going to see. I don't know who can contest the Brandon Ingram shot on this Thunder team that they feel comfortable tossing on him. Lou Dort's going to get that assignment. Can he force Brandon Ingram into some tough decisions? Can he force him into some bad shots? And then as someone who has not shot well from deep this season or in this regular season series, can he knock down the shots that he is absolutely going to be fed open? And then secondary from there, like where's OKC going to space Lou Dort? There have been some possessions where he's in a strong side corner just to eliminate some of the help and open up some driving lanes from Shea. He's been in the dunker spot. Where do they place him? Is he able to make an impact there? Steve, who do you have in this one?
I like the Thunder and what they've done. I could easily see Shea having a big night, them knocking down shots, some defensive coverages, some zone that throws the Pelicans off, and this thing gets off the rails quick. I'm going to trust Brandon Ingram's run and what CJ can do. I'm going to go with the Pelicans.
I figured you would. I don't love this matchup for OKC. I don't love the amount of length that they can throw. I kind of lean New Orleans in this one. Why are you tapping the, what is this?
I, for one, am shocked. You've been calling for the Thunder on the weather forecast all year. If we get to April, wait, is this the second year in a row you did this? Because you did this with the Wolves last year, didn't you? Yeah, pal. I'm on you, buddy.
I think I picked the Clippers in the play-in game last year, and they ended up getting that done. But like, I worry about that, and then beyond that, because we've talked about the Thunder defense this year, I am a little bit worried about what the transition defense has been in the second half of the year. And I think if OKC has a game where they're crowding Shea and he's not getting foul calls, and now it's a 5-on-4, to what the transition defense has been, New Orleans may just be able to get some easy buckets. And that's where I'm like, this feels like an uphill climb. And so it's not impossible for OKC to win this game at all, but I think I feel better about how New Orleans is playing heading into this one versus OKC, and that's probably why I give the Pelicans the edge. with that, we can now transition into some of the playoff series that we know. Obviously, with these play-in matchups, everything isn't set, but we do have the 3-6 series and we do have the 4-5 series. We can start in the where do you want to start? You want to start East or West?
Let's go East. Let's talk Sixers Nets, because you had a really good question to start this off. I don't know if it's your biggest one, but you had a really good question.
Yeah, let's have some fun with the Sixers and the Nets. I think for me, I have a lot of questions heading into the series, but I do wonder, can the Nets generate enough? Like, what kind of attention will Mikal Bridges draw offensively? I think is where I start. But I think taking like the 10,000 foot view, it's, hey, how's this Nets offense going to create openings? Mm-hmm. Because they have, I think Mikal Bridges is very much in the midst of his star turn. He isn't a 2 to the ball immediately type star guy yet, at least not on the scouting reports. So I kind of start with what kind of attention do you think Philly is going to show him?
Well, it's interesting. I think they start with drop. Mm-hmm. I think that's where they begin. I think eventually we may see Embiid at the level. I wondered how much switching we would get. Like this Nets offense, the question is, can they generate in the half court? They have talent on that roster. The Sixers aren't totally a switch team, so you feel kind of comfortable. But then it's like, who's unlocking this Sixers defense? Who's going to open the door? Can Mikal make enough plays to get Embiid to the level? Can they get to driving kick? You know, if you talk about Dinwiddie, Johnson, Doherty, Finney-Smith, all the wings they have, these are players that can make defenses pay. Mm-hmm. But can you get the defense in a position to have to pay? And then you think about, and going back to the regular season matchup, the one time these versions of teams played, the second half, the Philadelphia 76ers said, you know what? Let's throw some late switches out there. Mm-hmm. Joel, if they drive a little bit further, you just take the matchup, we'll kick them out. And I was like, where do you go now? Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to be key for the Brooklyn Nets. Can they keep their tempo up? Can they keep their movement up? Can they execute and try and get the Sixers in rotation? Because you can talk about some of the Sixers' deficiencies defensively with their personnel. If the Nets can't take advantage of it, it's going to make it tough.
Yeah. It's so funny that you brought that up, because I was watching that game earlier today and I was like, you know, like the obvious questions, hey, can they make them pay enough if they get dropped, et cetera? Like, cool. And then I was looking at some of the off-ball stuff, like there was a Spain pick and roll rep in there that Brooklyn got some good stuff. You know what? There may be enough pockets off the ball to where they may be able to do some stuff. Because we've talked about Joel, like, is he in a drop? Is he going to be at the level? Late, you throw in the late switches, and then that just became a thing in the second half. But like, okay, if they're going to have a pocket against drop, and then specifically off the ball involving Joel, like he's not going to switch out on that, you may be able to get enough to make Philly think. And then they went to the late switch thing in the second half. It's like, this is going to become a tempo deal, isn't it? Because Mikal, just his cadence as a pick and roll ball handler, takes his time, gets a guy on the hip, snakes it, gets around to the elbow. If it's a late switch, now he's dribbling back out, and then he's going into the between the legs dribbles and kind of waiting things out. They're going to have to play a lot more quickly in order to make that work if Philly is going to be more in tune with like late switching. And I'm kind of intrigued by that possibility, because I do think there is still a speed/athleticism advantage that Brooklyn has over Philly's roster. Like, I think if you just get into individual players, like Tyrese Maxey is easily the fastest guy there, et cetera. But like, I do think there is an athleticism edge that the Nets have. And if they're able to play with tempo and get good shots, then there's going to be an opening for them. And I think as we flip to the defensive end, I know you have thoughts on that. If they're able to force enough bad looks for Philadelphia, if they're able to benefit from like some record scratches if the ball swings from James Harden to a Tobias or a DeAnthony Melton or a PJ or whatever the case may be, if they're able to get out and run, like, a blueprint is there to make this interesting. How do you anticipate Brooklyn defending the James Harden, Joel Embiid two-man game?
I honestly anticipate a lot of switching. I anticipate them using their size to their advantage, going with switches, and I anticipate that mainly because they know they're going to double Joel Embiid. At least I have a feeling they're going to double Joel Embiid. Based off the regular season tape that I saw, they doubled a lot of Joel Embiid. So that's part of like the blend here for me. And it was one of my things, we can kind of cut through it. Are the Sixers ready for these double teams? Like Joel Embiid has improved as a passer, but I don't think that the doubles are just not going to come in this series. And my mind goes to, okay, this is one thing I've been stuck on. Everyone talks about, hey, can Philadelphia make these open shots? Mm-hmm. Can Tobias not make these open shots? Do they have enough shooting out there? Can PJ Tucker make these open shots? If I'm Brooklyn, I'm thinking we have size and length. Hopefully we can do enough to bother Harris and Maxey off the dribble. We can get to Harden with some switches. We can double Embiid. We give ourselves a chance. We trust our rotation. Can the Sixers keep the advantage when they get the doubles? Can they keep generating quality looks? And that's where I'm like, okay, what's the balance going to be? We know Joel Embiid can do stuff in the post. We know Philadelphia shifted him to the elbow to try and open things up. How are they going to balance? Where does he get the post touches? Where does he get the elbow touches? Do we go pick and roll? Do we add some movement in? Are they ready to play with tempo against those switches? Are they ready to keep the ball moving? Do they bog down because of it? And keep in mind, Embiid had a great game, even with Brooklyn saying we're going to double you. But how does that affect their rhythm and their flow? Because to your point, the James Harden, Joel Embiid two-man game pick and roll has been automatic at times this season. Really, really good. Most teams chose drop. I don't think Brooklyn goes there. I think they switch. I think they double. And so it's going to be on Philly to keep things moving, start sets quicker, and play out of it. And that's where it's like, okay, do they bog down? Do they get themselves in trouble in a couple games? Or is this a scenario where Joel Embiid gets someone in foul trouble and now you're really in trouble? Like, that's where it's like, hey, because as soon as they went to like, we're automatically doubling the post, it was like, okay, Joel, go to the elbow and let's see what they do now.
Yeah, have fun with that, pal.
Oh, no help coming, sweet. Like,
what do you do with it? But to that point, like, again, watching that game and then like, okay, let me look at all of the Harden and Embiid pick and rolls. Let's see how Brooklyn dealt with that. They switched just about all of them, to your point. And I was like, okay, let's do some fact checking here. Let's see what does this look like. James Harden, Joel Embiid pick and roll, most reps in the league between those two. Over 1.1 points per possession season wide. One of the best marks in the NBA. Against Brooklyn this season, 0.83 points per possession on trips featuring a Harden and Embiid pick and roll. Easily one of the lowest in the league among the teams that they faced this year. And I think this really spotlights the decision-making of the others. Because, like, in theory, we zoom out. Like, okay, if you switch this pick and roll and it turns into a Joel Embiid post-up, right? We got James Harden one pass away. Cool. But if James Harden isn't taking catch and shoots, what does that do? It makes it easier to send help from there. And then if you have a level of comfort of sending help off of him on these Embiid post-ups, now you can vary where you're sending the help. We may send it from one pass away. We may send it from the baseline. We can now play with this a little bit and further throw off your rhythm with these double teams. And as you said, Joel Embiid has gotten better at passing out of doubles. As Michael Pina at The Ringer recently wrote, sometimes he just does not care about your double team. He will shoot over it and score over it anyway. There were some reps in the Brooklyn regular season series where he did just that. There were some games, against Boston, did just that. Trying to think of it. There have been multiple games where this has happened. But if Brooklyn's able to switch and flatten that out, if Philadelphia can't make quick enough decisions when Joel Embiid makes those passes, that can be an issue. And I think back to the beginning of that matchup where these teams were the current iterations of themselves. Do you remember that turnover fest in the first half when Brooklyn they were switching and then loading up behind it? You got Mikal Bridges playing free safety behind these doubles, and it's like, oh, this is a thing that can happen. And so I just wonder, like, first and foremost, how healthy is James Harden? We are this late into the Nets Philly things. Like, what is that? What is the leg? What is the Achilles looking like?
I don't mean to cut you off, but they need him. They need him to be healthy in this series with the amount of switches Brooklyn should do and the amount of plays he'll have to make. He's going to have to beat Claxton. He's going to have to beat Dorian Finney-Smith. He's going to have to beat these guys off the bounce, and especially driving closeouts. Like, he may be the one who swings the ball, but he's got to make some plays and get in there. They need that.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, just to bounce off of that, because I was looking at most of the time when they would switch to Harden and Embiid action, like it's a pitch to Embiid. But there were some Harden ISOs against Nick Claxton. He was able to draw some fouls against him. So I'm just like, I wonder what this, because this wasn't a case of James Harden has blown by Nick Claxton and now he's hacking to save a bucket. This is very much move, move, move. Claxton is mirroring him, move, drive. Claxton is right there, and he may be leaned over a little bit too much, and now Harden is able to kind of get into his body and get that stuff. Now it's a playoff series where you just see James Harden. And Nick Claxton has grown as a defender tremendously this year. If it's just, hey, I got to focus on you, now I get to study what your tendencies are. I'm trying to get your cadence right, and I don't have to worry about you and then the Blazers and then the Lakers and then the Heat and then it's just you. I wonder what the learning curve for Nick Claxton is going to be with those ISOs. And if Claxton is able to contain Harden at all or contain him to a certain level, I really wonder what happens with the half-court offense with Philly. Because if they show comfort doubling Embiid and Harden can't make them pay like that, we going down the pecking order now. When Tyrese Maxey is in, what is the decision-making like? Tobias Harris, what is the decision-making like? D'Anthony Melton, what is the decision-making like? Shake Milton, what is the decision-making like, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where it gets interesting for me. A quick question on the Philly front as we're on their half-court offense. Mm-hmm. Where do they space PJ Tucker? How important is where they're placing him in the offense going to be in this series?
I would assume the corners. I'm sure they'll mix in some dunker spots. See what I did there?
Aha!
In there. That's going to be very interesting because of the fact that Philly usually likes to keep their people set for spacing purposes, so Joel Embiid can make the right passes, as Jackson Frank mentioned on this pod once upon a time. Mm-hmm. I like PJ Tucker cutting, though. So how can he mix that in if Brooklyn's going to be aggressive defensively? I'm sure you have PJ Tucker thoughts.
I do have PJ Tucker thoughts. And going back through those games, he became a lot more important than I anticipated in this one. Because I had the general, hey, if he's spaced, it's going to be a help point. Can he make him pay with corner threes? But then I started thinking about, again, if James Harden is one pass away and he's not taking these shots, now Brooklyn can mix in where they're doubling. And if you're doubling from the baseline, normally that's PJ setting a pin in for someone, force a skip, et cetera, et cetera. I just wonder where they're going to have him. Because they've mixed in him being on the weak side corner. He's been in the dunker spot so he can set those pin in screens. He's been in the strong side corner to kind of minimize the help. Can they move him around the chessboard to play with Brooklyn in that regard and kind of tilt that stuff, or just to help things, tilt that back in their favor and make it harder for them to kind of key in? And so that is one of those things where, okay, I'm thinking about this a little bit more than I thought I had to heading into the series, especially with how it's weird to say successful considering what Joel Embiid averaged against Brooklyn this year, but relative to what the Harden and Embiid pairing has been this year, in light of that success, that's where I'm just like, that's got to keep an eye on it.
So that's your X factor.
Yeah, I think PJ's going to be huge in this one. He's going to have to knock down shots where he's placed, and then he got the Mikal Bridges matchup when those two teams played, so he's going to have to defend them as well. Who is your X factor in this one?
Spencer Dinwiddie. Brooklyn needs his shot making in this series big time.
Boy, do they.
For Philly, it's Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey. They have to show up on both ends of the floor. They're going to have to make plays. They're going to have to make shots. Got you.
All right, who do you have winning the series, sir?
I want to go Sixers in 6. I think Brooklyn's defense has talked me into thinking they may be able to get it done. I just feel like there's a very small room for error. And so I'm going to go Sixers in 5.
We've been doing this pod for too long. I also have the Sixers in in 5. I think there are some pockets for Brooklyn to attack offensively. And if it turns into a turnover fest for Philly, there's a pathway for Brooklyn winning games. I don't think they win this series. And ultimately, I think it'll be a situation where Joel and James may be below their regular season levels, but they still score enough to win. So I'm going to go Sixers in 5. Let's swing out west. Sacramento, Golden State. The Mike Brown revenge. I'm kidding. But that should be a very fun series. The Warriors won the regular season series 3-1. And there was a matchup in late April that the Kings just didn't play much of the important people. But for the most part, this was healthy stuff throughout the regular season series. So you got to glean a lot What popped for you in film, and like what questions do you have heading into this series?
Come on, man. Let's not bury the lead. It's Draymond Green. Draymond Green is the X factor. As I was watching some of these regular season games that happened miles and miles ago.
Got October, a couple of Novembers, and then April.
4 universes ago. The one thing that stood out to me, they put Draymond Green on De'Aaron Fox to start. Okay, so now all his actions are a switch. Okay, so now Draymond can just switch everything. Got it. Mm-hmm. How important is Draymond Green going to be? How much fun is Draymond against Sabonis going to be? That's where it gets really, really interesting. What's something that jumped to you?
It honestly, that was one of the ones that popped for me because I remember Western Conference Finals last year. Hey, let's put Draymond on Jalen Brunson. Let's just muck that up. You think back to the Phoenix matchups with Golden State. Hey, we're just going to put Draymond on Chris Paul. We're going to make sure that Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton pick and roll is a switch. And so, like, doing the refresher over the weekends, like, okay, who did they put Draymond on? Was this a Draymond on Sabonis ordeal? What did they do? Pop on a game, and sure enough, it's Draymond on De'Aaron Fox. It was like, okay, what do we do with this? And as I'm watching, I think that was one of the November matchups. And as I'm watching that game, and not too long into the first quarter, it's just De'Aaron Fox brings the ball up. He gets a screen from Kevin Huerter. Huerter swings it to, I want to say Keegan Murray. But like they're running some action. They start messing with the matchups before going into a Fox Sabonis pick and roll. And I was like, I am intrigued. Can Sacramento move Draymond Green around enough? Can they flip this on him? Because I don't want to say it's a trump card to have Draymond on De'Aaron Fox. I mean, you can place him anywhere. That's the value of Draymond Green. This is why he's one of the best defenders in NBA history. But like, can you use that to your advantage? Can you get Klay Thompson into the action now? Like, okay, we're leaving Draymond alone. We're going to keep Andrew Wiggins over here. Klay, you navigate these screens. And if you want to switch that, all right, Klay, you're going to bang with Domantas Sabonis multiple times a game. And even if you're able to get some stops, what does that do for your stamina? What does that do for your legs moving forward? Can we tire out one of these shooters? Because like I don't think there's going to be a ton of like Steph mismatch hunting for Sacramento. I may be wrong on that. I don't think they go there. I don't think they want to deviate too far from what their offensive ethos is. Mm-hmm. But I think they're going to do enough early in the offense, and this helps that they play as fast as they do. I think there's going to be enough. Let's just run this little off-ball action here. Let's go. Let's get some pistol action going. Let's get Draymond over here. Let's get him on Kevin Huerter now. We still have Keegan Murray spacing. Now let's see what we can get. And if that doesn't work, we can swing it. Sabonis going to flash. All right, now let's test you. All right, Draymond, let's test you with these cuts. What does that look like opposed to like switching directly into the action and manipulating things that way? I'm juiced up for this one. How do you think the Kings deal with Steph?
Oh, at the level and traps. And that was one of my questions as I was watching. How much do the Warriors really want to hit that pick and roll button? And what can they get out of it? I think we know what Draymond can do as a roller. I'm sure there are small lineup questions that we may have. But how much do they want to go to pick and roll, get two on the ball, and play out of it?
Mm-hmm.
And is that going to end up being the deciding factor when they decide, okay, we have to do this to get what we want? So I don't see a world where they don't do that. I don't see them switching either. So can Golden State hit the blend of, hey, we're hitting you with movement, we're hitting you with cutting, and we're also hitting you with pick and roll to open up? Because that was the big question mark about Sacramento's defense. Can they hold up and pick and roll? Are they going to be able to fly around and rotate? Golden State kind of gives them a little bit of a reprieve, although you still have to deal with all that movement and all that shooting and also still pick and roll. So it's such a fun deal of who's going to be able to find what they want defensively and sustain it, mm-hmm. and who's just going to keep the pressure on.
It's so odd because I exited like the prep feeling like, okay, you know what? I'll be very clear. I don't feel good about Sacramento's defense against Golden State's offense. I felt a little bit better about the half court stuff. Like, okay, at least I know this is going to be the game plan. And knowing Mike Brown, there's going to be something more detailed as they have an actual series to game plan for. Like, okay, if Sabonis is in it, he's going to be at the level. They've shown enough to where they can try to kick out and then rotate behind that. Cool. I found myself worried about what transition defense is going to look like for them. And surprisingly, as we've talked about the Sacramento defense, the transition defense has been good for them this year. They have gotten back. They've gotten matched up. They were a top 10 defense in terms of transition points per possession allowed. And I think they were third in frequency allowed. So teams didn't get to run on them a ton, which is also surprising considering how fast Sacramento plays. But when you're that efficient as an offense, that would also make some sense. Against Golden State, it's a whole different thing. Because even if you are able to match up, they just flow into a handoff. They go side to side. If you botch anything, you're cooked. And just the hectic nature of matching up bodies against Golden State, and Steph Curry can just pull from 35 if he wants to and just negate all of that. Or if Draymond Green grabs the board and he's pushing, now you have to pick up guys on the fly. Like this may just be, okay, De'Aaron Fox, you're the closest guy to him. You got to get him. Does that mean Keegan Murray's now chasing Steph? Do they then flow into some off-ball action? Do you have Clay screening for Steph now, or Steph screening for Clay, or Steph screening for Andrew Wiggins? Can you navigate that on the fly? This is going to be, he's not my primary X factor, so I'm not going to go there. This is going to be a big series for Keegan Murray.
Okay.
And I say it's going to be a big series for Keegan Murray because he's going to have to navigate a lot off the ball defensively. And even offensively, as I was going through that specific game back in November, like Steph got the Keegan matchup. I don't think Sacramento is ever going to like tilt their offense like, let's run it through Keegan. But like there's enough off-ball stuff there. And as the years progress, like Keegan has gotten more aggressive looking for his own shot. Like there's enough to where you can like turn it into like some paper cuts throughout the game. Like, okay, here's a quick 2 or 3 possession stretch where Keegan gets his. And then we go back to what we're doing. I wonder how Keegan holds up in this matchup on both ends.
Fair point. So who's your X factor though?
Kevon Looney is going to be my X factor in this one. One, just very unheralded for what he does on both ends of the floor. I remember writing about him last year. I was like, he just feels like he's a solid B in every defensive coverage that you can ask him to do. He does his job offensively, really good screener, can act as a handoff hub, et cetera, et cetera. If 2 to the ball is going to be your primary coverage against Steph, and I think in the regular season matchup, it was Keegan Murray on Dre, Kevon Looney, I think, is going to get a little bit more usage as a screener in this one. And if so, he's going to have a lot of short roll opportunities. And he's going to have to nail those not only as a passer, but as a scorer too. And I don't worry about him making bad decisions. I don't even want to say I worry about him as a scorer. I feel slightly worse about him as like an intermediate scorer than I do with him as a guy that makes the pass and finds someone to dunker spot or for a lob or whatever. So I think he's definitely going to have to hold up there. And on the other end of the floor, I would imagine he's going to find himself switched out on an island against De'Aaron Fox, depending on what they're running. Will he be able to contain the drives? Because if he can, Sacramento can score late in the clock. Like they've been doing it all year long, playing outside of the play to steal your tagline. But it does get a little bit tougher for them to sustain that if Kevon Looney's able to hold up. So that's where I go. Who do you have?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, Kevon Looney's he's a good pick. They need their big lineup and their small lineup to work. You want to make sure you can switch him out on De'Aaron Fox. And if he's switchable, that always changes how the Warriors look. I still go Draymond. I just think he's going to be so important to them defensively, both in their big lineup and definitely in their small lineup. And if he's going to have to roll, he's got to make some plays, he's got to hit some shots. I think he's the key to the series for me.
I got you. One quick question before we go to predictions. How much faith do you have in these Golden State small ball lineups against this Sacramento team defensively?
It just depends on what they want to do with Draymond when they're small. Because in theory, Draymond against Sabonis should be positive. On the other end, Sacramento could attack Curry and Poole. Are the Warriors able to sustain their defense in those scenarios? But the Kings aren't necessarily hey, we're just going to hunt this matchup type of team. So that's going to be the balance again. Are they going to be able to sustain?
Got you. That's where I was going. Like wherever Draymond isn't, does that become where De'Aaron Fox says, hey, I'm going to blow past you? And depending on where Sabonis is, like, is he setting screens on the weak side for someone? Because again, with Sacramento starting lineup in particular, even if you occupy Kevin Huerter somewhere, Keegan Murray can be spaced and vice versa. So you can still open up those driving lanes for De'Aaron Fox to attack. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Who do you have winning this series and how many games?
I have Warriors in 7.
Okay. You have Golden State winning a game 7 on the road, huh? I'm intrigued. I'm going to go Golden State in 6. I do worry a little bit about the transition defense. I still just have my reservations about the defense in general. And like this specific matchup with what they can, how many ways they can hit you off the ball, it's kind of tough. Like I would almost feel better about them if they just had like someone that really leaned into pick and roll. Like, okay, we key in on this, take this away, dare this person to shoot, fine. The fact that Golden State can just hit you in so many different ways, I don't feel great about it. So I'm going to trust Golden State to win on the road. We'll go from there. Let's head into these 4-5s real quickly. Cleveland and New York. The Knicks won the season series 3-1. Steve, what's your big question heading into this one?
Yeah, that's the Spider-Man meme series to me. I want to know which team can elevate in the playoffs, who can make the leap. I think they're both very good at what they do. Who has another gear in them? Who can elevate past what they've done so far? I wonder, is it time to be concerned about Evan Mobley and Jared Allen? Not that they're not good, but this is a different setting for them. Mm-hmm. And if Julius Randle is healthy, combined with Jalen Brunson, those are a little bit trickier matchups in a sense. Now, Randle obviously could just not make any threes and not drive, so that's a different story. But Jalen Brunson, his ability in pick and roll to lead the dance, to be shifty, to be crafty, that's a big key for me. Mm-hmm. And then it's hard because you want to say, hey, does Cleveland just rely on their guards too much? And then you look at a series like this and it's like, oh, Cleveland's two guards just could be the difference.
Yeah.
And so my eyes go to Darius Garland. Mm-hmm. I think the Knicks are going to play him in a drop, make him make them pay, and make him make plays, and hope they can contest on the roll. I don't know what you do with Donovan Mitchell. Do you put two on the ball because he's been making every pull-up known to man to make defenses pay? Mm-hmm. So there are so many difference makers, and it just feels like who can knock off maybe the top two is what may separate it. What say you?
I got you. I'll toss a very quick question at you before I answer. Like between Garland and Mitchell, like obviously you want everyone to play poorly if you're the Knicks. Which guard would you prioritize taking away? Would it be Mitchell or would it be Garland for you?
I think if you're going game plan wise, you got to try and take away Mitchell with your game plan.
Okay.
Be more aggressive there. And then Garland's going to have to, he probably gets the CJ McCollum in Portland treatment.
Okay.
Where it's like, we know you're good, but also we're going to save some money here.
I got you. I think for me heading into this one, I worry about, or I wonder like who wins the paint. And that's very basic, very old school. But like in this series in particular, what Mitchell Robinson has done on the offensive glass all year long, and specifically what he's done in this series, just Mitchell Robinson versus Jared Allen is just, that might just be the matchup that swings the series. Which sounds wild in a series that features Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and what Jalen Brunson has done this year, what Julius Randle has done this year. And hey, is that ankle going to be all right by the time the playoffs start? It's going to be a pretty big deal. We got to see how he's feeling, what the rust is going to look like, etc. But the offensive glass, can New York dominate that? Can New York wall off the paint enough? And for Cleveland, like, can you rebound well enough? Because during the regular season series, the Knicks just blasted them on the glass. And this was something that I kind of keyed in on as I was writing about Evan Mobley not too long ago. It's like, hey, he has been much better as the lone five on the floor. He has gotten better as just an anchor and drop. He has gotten better as a rebounder. Everyone else around him, there are some question marks about how well they can contain on the perimeter, how well they can gain rebound. And against this Knicks team, it ain't just Mitchell Robinson. He goes to the bench. Like, if we see some Jericho Sims, he's a human pogo stick. Josh Hart, one of the best rebounding wings in basketball. RJ Barrett is a solid rebounder. Jalen Brunson does not mind mixing it up and getting his hands dirty down there. Julius Randle is rugged underneath. So who wins that? Who's able to tilt that? Who's able to end possessions or who's able to generate extra possessions is going to be my single biggest question heading into this one. I guess secondarily, I am curious about Isaac Okoro in this one. Like, obviously, the jumper is going to be important. You already said you would prioritize. Well, yeah, I would imagine he gets the Jalen Brunson assignment as he did for most of the regular season series. How well does he do there? And then offensively, it's kind of similar to the PJ Tucker thing for me in the Philly series. Where is Isaac Okoro going to be spaced here? Are you putting him in the strong side corner to minimize help? How often do we see empty corner pick and roll from Cleveland? Because they have diced teams up, particularly late, going to that alignment, flowing out of horns and then going into a pick and roll or whatever the case may be. they've had some fun out of that. If Isaac Okoro's in the dunker spot, does that eliminate some of the roll threat from Cleveland? So I'm curious to see where that goes. How do you feel about Okoro's his status in this series?
I feel fine. They're going to need him to navigate and have that Jalen Brunson matchup. I think they have been creative with how they've used him as a screener and spaced him. So that with his improved shot making, I feel pretty good about it.
Okay.
Is he your X factor?
Yeah. He's going to be very important. Like, he's going to have to do some work against Jalen Brunson, stay out of foul trouble. He's going to have to knock down enough shots. I'm curious to see what him as a screener looks like in this particular series, depending on who gets that matchup. I would imagine it's going to be more feeding one of the stars a matchup versus it opened up short roll opportunities for him or anything like that. So we'll see how he does. Then RJ Barrett, who just eternally feels like an X factor here. Decision making is going to be very important for him. He's going to have to knock down shots. The defense is certainly going to have to be at a level. If you are allocating your resources, I would imagine Quentin Grimes gets the Donovan Mitchell assignment. Like, he's going to have to do his thing against Garland or vice versa. He's going to have to do well. And if they do try to stash a smaller guy on him, can he take advantage of those, either with ISOs or post-ups? Scoreless on 4 post-ups during the regular season series, missed some reads there. Can he take advantage of those? Who is your X factor in this one?
Darius Garland. He's got to make the plays. He's got to make the reads and engage the big and drop, open up things for their bigs. He's got to make the pull-ups. He's got to hold up defensively when the Knicks try and put him in action. So that's my X factor.
All right. And who do you have?
Cavs in 7.
I am going to go. I think I go Cleveland in 6. I'll say if I knew heading into it Julius Randle's healthy, I would probably like New York in this one a little bit more because I do trust them on the interior more. And again, like, I just need to see what Jared Allen versus Mitchell Robinson is going to look like. I think Allen's a better player overall, but like that particular one, there's just a level of physicality and athleticism where it gets a little iffy. But with Randle not being healthy, like, I just wonder about the scores aside from Jalen Brunson in this one. And even Brunson's going to see a lot of length thrown at him. So I will lean Cleveland in 6 in this one. Well, let's close this out west. The Phoenix Suns, the Los Angeles Clippers. Probably my favorite series to think about just because I have no real reference point in this one due to the trades and injuries and stuff.
There you go. That's the most important thing. That was my number one question for you. Do you have any sort of feel on this series? Because I don't. Folks, I'm not the expert. I don't know. I'm just
oh, brother. But no, I am very curious about this one. And my thinking immediately goes to what kind of cross matching do we see in this series? Where are you placing Kawhi Leonard? Are you giving him KD? Are you putting him on Josh Okogie just so you can roam around? And that's assuming that Okogie continues to start heading into the series. What do you do there? From the Sun side, are you putting Kevin Durant on Russell Westbrook? Not for the narrative reasons or any of that nonsense, but because that's a help point and that allows KD to roam around. And it's not like it's not like the Clippers are like the 2014 Spurs in terms of half-court offensive flow either. And so if you can have KD as a roamer in that regard, like, does that further muck up what the Clippers do, especially in light of Paul George not being available for at least the early portion of the first round? So my mind goes to where are we matching these? What are the lineups there? Would you put KD on Russ? Or like where would you have him?
I don't know if I'll put KD on Russ to start. I might stash that in my back pocket. Just like I may start Kawhi on Okogie and let him roam and then see how it works because we can always adjust. So I don't know if we see any to start. I've been wrong before, but I think they may keep it basic. I think you let Kawhi roam. If you can, you let KD roam. Because even though he would be helping off Russ, if Russ has the ball, he's involved in the action. And now, is that just a screen? Now Ayton switched out, or what does that look like?
I think if you're Phoenix, you would be okay with that. Well, I guess that would even depend on like which Ayton you're getting defensively.
That's one thing. Number two, why wouldn't I just have Kawhi come screen immediately?
Yep, that's you know what? It's a valid point.
That's where it's like, I don't know which matchup they go to, because now if we get KD to switch off early, now it's like, hey, Chris Paul, come here, or we can just run what we wanted to run.
Mm-hmm. See, this is why you have the coaching experience, and this is why I just tap away at my computer.
Oh Lord!
But
this is what we doing?
That's a really good point. On the playing with matchups, and then on that front, how often do you think the Clippers double Phoenix's guys, or do you think it's just going to be we are switching and then we'll show help where we can?
I think it's switching outside of Zubac, which is your question ties into two of my questions.
Okay.
So I assume it's going to be switching. Now, my question is, how long can Zubac last in this series? That's no disrespect to him, but these are pull-up threats. And so he's going to be at the level. If he's at the level, this is the Phoenix Suns. They are excellent at taking that defense and just manipulating the heck out of you with it. Mm-hmm. We got spacing. We got empty corner. We got movement into it. That's great. And then it ties into, is Devin Booker the one that you try to keep out of rhythm? They've shown traps against him. Now, Kevin Durant makes that a lot trickier to do.
Yeah.
But we know the Clippers not only like to switch, they like to switch and then throw a double at you. Do the Clippers have enough personnel and versatility to try and throw different looks at Devin Booker, keep him out of rhythm? So not just doubling outright, but do we just try our best? And with KD, is it, where are we doubling him, I guess? Mm-hmm. Is it doubles in the post? Is it traps and pick and roll? I don't think they just double one-on-one on ISOs. So that's where it gets tricky. I would imagine KD gets doubles in the post. Booker probably gets more aggression in pick and roll. But the Clippers are going to have to mix it up. And again, this is the Clipper team in the playoffs that has all these things they can do. And it typically takes them like 2 to 4 business days to figure out which ones they want to do. So who knows?
But when they do, they make their Western Conference final. But no, in all seriousness, that's a good point. Like, I think to answer your question, I believe you try to get Booker out of rhythm because I think he's the star that you can actually get out of rhythm. Because Kevin Durant just does not care about what your coverage is, ultimately. Like, oh, cool, second guy's coming over here. I'm 7 foot with a 8.5 foot release point. I would just shoot over it, or I would just pass over it. Not that there haven't been stretches where he hasn't handled double teams well or anything like that. But just conceptually, Kevin Durant is more unaffected by aggressive coverages than Devin Booker is. Like, Booker's still 6'5", 6'6" at the end of the day. And if it's whoever his defender is, like I would assume if Eric Gordon starts, it'd probably be him. If it's Eric Gordon plus Zubac trapping, like that's still just a lot of size to throw at Devin Booker, and you go from there. How important is Chris Paul scoring going to be in this series?
They're going to need it at points, especially in the minutes where Zubac is in, if Zubac is in a drop against them. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's as important as it has been for Phoenix. I guess it's what's more important, his scoring or his ability to hit some catch and shoot threes? I don't know. Mm. Or his ability to not get picked on and pick and roll.
It'll probably be that third option.
But here's the other part. And it got my mind thinking, with no Paul George, right? Mm-hmm. Still a question mark. The Clippers' hallmark in the playoffs is going small. Do they have enough size to go small like they want to? Russ, Eric Gordon, Norman Powell can do it. But if I put Kevin Durant in action, do you want to switch that? Does that now force you to double? Does that open things up in ways that you weren't necessarily ready for? That's the interesting part where I'm like, I don't know which verse they're going to choose.
Mm-hmm. Like, I think as I'm thinking this out, like, that's a really good question first and foremost. Like, if they go Russ, Terrence Mann, Kawhi Batum, Robert Covington, that's probably on the cusp from a size perspective. But even then, that's like giving you like 1.5 help points if you're Phoenix defensively. And so you can still
I'm about to say, that's my point. If I'm Phoenix, sweet. team defense, here we come.
Hey, you knock down those shots, bud. You got it. But no, that's a good one. The Zubac question is like how often they go small. Do you have a small ball lineup that you trust with Phoenix in this series?
That I trust?
Yeah, any Ayton-less lineups?
I mean, probably put Terrence Ross in. Go Ross, Craig, KD, Booker, Paul.
Okay.
I could dig it.
Okay, I got you. I guess on that front, who's your X factor in this one?
That's a tough one. Norman Powell was the one that came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
They really need not just his scoring, but his drives. That's going to be key. They're going to need to get in the paint and put some pressure on them. It's hard for me to not say Nick Batum because of how important I feel like he's going to be to what they're going to try and do defensively, to one-on-one defense, to three-point shooting. So I think I'm going to go Batum.
Okay, Batum's a good call because they are absolutely going to say, "Hey, bud, can you guard that KD fella? Can you attempt to either chase Devin Booker over these screens or like at least be like the initial switch point here so we can keep flattening things out? Let's see what we can do here." Josh Okogie for me. I do think he's absolutely getting the Kawhi matchup off rip, and I am worried because that man is a really good defender. He is not as strong as Kawhi Leonard is, and even if he defends him well, Kawhi Leonard very well may not care and shoot over the top of him anyway. And if the Josh Okogie matchup becomes we got to send extra help towards him, I don't want to open up things for this Clippers half-court offense if I don't have to. And so I worry about that. And then the offensive end is going to be obvious. Where is he spaced? Will he knock down enough shots from the corner? I still have the Dallas matchup etched in my mind in which Phoenix still won that game. That man took corner three after corner three after corner three, and it missed and it missed and it missed. And then next thing you know, it's Ish Wainwright. It's like, that is very neat. But no, he's going to have to knock those down. And if the Clippers do go small, like I still think his offensive rebounding can be very valuable for Phoenix. So if he's able to contribute enough offensively, I think that's going to be big. And I guess zooming out big picture, just Phoenix's second unit. Are they ready for this matchup? I think it's going to be fun for them. Like the mixing match is going to be important. And then like broadening from there, like what the stars are going to look like. Does Monty deviate at all? Do we just see, okay, we're going to have two of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton on the floor at all times, instead of kind of winding down which starters are out there, and then it's Devin Booker plus bench, and then starting second with Kevin Durant plus bench, et cetera, et cetera. So keeping an eye on the rotation pattern there. Steve, who do you have in this series?
I'm going to go with Suns in 6.
Okay.
I think the Clippers are going to bother Phoenix to a degree. I don't know, especially if PG is going to be out. The tempo concerns. I think Kawhi can throw a lot over the top rope, but I'm going to go Suns in 6.
Okay. I'm also going to go Suns in 6. Like it's more so because Paul George is out. If Paul George wasn't out, I think this very much just goes 7. I also wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being Suns in 5 and it's like a tightly contested 5. Like I don't think the Suns just blast the Clippers in any scenario, to be frank about it. But I would probably say Suns in 6. Losing that star power is going to hurt. And ultimately, like there hasn't been a great answer to Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton on the floor. The sample isn't super large. The Suns have not lost a game when those guys have played. The offense has been elite. The defense, surprisingly to some, not so much to others, has also been elite with those 4 on the floor. I just don't know if the Clippers have enough answers for that. And with the lineup searching that's had to been done from the Clipper side this year, like I trust Ty in the playoffs. This is a lot to try to figure out in round 1, especially in light of what you said. Like it may take a couple games for him to find really what he wants to go and then hammer it. Like 2 games against this team may just very well be that we got all the momentum now. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Dunker Spot. If you have not already, please subscribe to us. We are on Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us. You can follow me on Twitter at Nekias NBA. You can follow Steve on Twitter at SteveJones20. If you want to watch us on YouTube, you can now do so. Subscribe to JJ Redick's YouTube channel, and you'll be able to check us out there. Join the Dunker Spot community on Twitter if you haven't already. We're having lots of fun discussions in there. If you want to watch hoops with us, or wrestling, or cooking, or The Bachelor, or baseball, or whatever else, come rock with us. We are having a ton of fun with the with some watch parties. So I'll drop the link in the description. It should be hyperlinked. If so, just click on that, enter your information. It's free, no shenanigans. If not, copy and paste the link. It's going to be free. Again, no shenanigans. It'll be in the YouTube description as well. So you can just click that and sign up. You should be good. And with that, we will catch y'all later in the week.
Smash that like button.